I've really got to
Welcome
do
to
something
Dark
with it.
Sorcery. I'm Alfredo Martinez, and I have with me Shane Bugbee. Shane, good to have you on.
Hey, thank you for having me on, Alfredo.
You're very, very welcome. Shane, you are the final person LeVay had made a satanic priest. Is that right?
That's me. Yeah, it's a big, that's a pretty big deal now that Satanism's so big. At the
Yeah,
time,
tell.
I was like, I remember asking, like, what is this going to give? Is it give me a discount somewhere? I don't know what this means.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about. First of all, before we get into that, tell us a bit about your spiritual background, how that all got started.
Well, spirituality is so much like the word is so defined individually by so many people. It's almost like art. How do you define art? How do you define love? How do you define spirituality? And then spirituality gets defined by religions.
Yeah, it's a very broad term.
Right. So for me, I'm it depends on who I'm talking to. I'm only a Satanist if it bothers you usually, otherwise, if you're Christian or something else, I'm like, yeah, I'm a Satanist. But
Right.
I don't go around saying I'm a Satanist. Um, I'm a more of an agnostic in the Carl Sagan sense of the word. Like the pale blue dot is there, and you look at that amazing picture that he points out. This is us and this little grain of sand in the universe,
Mhm.
and it made me understand how little we know. No matter how much we say we know, how little we know. So I'm not opposed to a spirituality or understanding that people believe in spiritual stuff, but I don't really recognize it in my existence. I can't wait to see what's next when I pass away and see if we're right or wrong about that.
Mhm.
So spirituality to me exists all in the mind and it's creativity. If I were to call anything what I really worship or cling to in times of struggle or celebration, what guides me ethically is artwork, poetry. That stuff is my driving force. Or like I said, those are the things that when I hear people talk about their spirituality and what they get out of it, I can relate in a way where I'm like, oh, I get the same amount of artwork, whether I'm observing artwork or making artwork, reading artwork, listening to artwork. That's my. I don't like the word religion at all.
Right. That's not a very, very good term. But I mean, you say art. Would you say that like you had described first of all, let me just say that I believe that art is expressions of the soul, so I can definitely understand and respect that. Now you had mentioned you had called Anton LaVey an artist.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and what is your reason for that?
Well, I mean, just the idea that he was in a group of artists, his whole existence was like surrounded by artists and creatives, and understanding that the process he used to create the Church of Satan or Satanism, those are all like artist kind of this brute artist. He's a fry cook. He's looking at people and he just starts to creation like that. I don't think he was looking. I don't think he understood. I possibly did. I shouldn't say that, but I don't think you understand when you're doing something that it's going to be a big part of history. That's a mistake. That you fall into that on a mistake. Let me. Oh man, I meant to button my shirt up. Let me do that.
You're
That's
good, man.
that's a mistake. Like when you fall into history, when you become historic, it's like by mistake.
Hmm.
And so, but to talk about why he was an artist, I mean, I saw his digital artwork on his computer. Like, he showed me on one of the earliest Macs, like, this is some digital art. He was doing digital art when I met him, and that's like
Oh,
25, 30
cool.
years ago. Right. He did paintings. He was part of the avant-garde is often artists, intellectuals. So that's how I see it. And you see him doing performance art when he's doing a ritual for me isn't something that you necessarily broadcast, put on stage, show pictures of. That
Right.
becomes more performance art now. You're performing for other people. Rituals are
Hmm.
so individual and personal amongst people that you know you I don't you typically don't share them unless you're looking to get something out of it.
Same with me. I usually don't record it. film stuff and put it out there. It's private.
Right. And that's, I think, how LeVay was. When he did that, it was performance art. And I think those are aspects that like when you see the Black Panthers, the Yippies, they all come from that moment in time where TV was new, and they were looking to, how can we get our word out? How can we be seen and heard? And I think that's a big part of artists. Like, how can I be seen and heard? Look at me for who I am. Look at what's inside of me, because you can't see me. You can't see my soul. You can't see my spirit. Look at it. Here it is. And so, and that has to do with beliefs, personal beliefs, philosophical quandaries. And so I think when he started to do that, it was, he does a lot of shocking things. He understood what would shake people up, same as the Black Panthers carrying shotguns down the street. They understood from an intellectual point of view that they were using tricks of the artist. And I've spoke to a handful of the original Black Panthers, and they would agree. They agreed with me. Yeah, we were using tricks of the arts, and they wouldn't consider themselves a full-time artist. They were everything. And it's the same, like when LeVay called me a Satanist, I was like, I'm not a Satanist. And he's like, those are the best Satanists, the ones that don't go around calling themselves Satanist, or they don't necessarily take on that word. And so,
So
I see him as an artist just based on how he put things together. The Baphomet, how he created that. He took that image and made it his own. The stuff that's in the Baphomet you usually see put on T-shirts and stuff like that is the one that he created. And so that's why I call him an artist. I mean, he used art, performance art. And
now, would you say that his message in Satanism and the impact that he was going for could not be fully understood by today's generation because, what was considered controversial back in his day is like you had said in the previous video, is mainstream nowadays. So do you believe that the method that he was going after can be completely understood to this day by this generation?
Well, it's much like anyone who's progressive like that, or almost a prophet, for lack of a better word. Crowley, for instance, LeVay, for instance, people aren't going to understand his influence, but he influenced some of the most powerful people. Both of these characters did. So it's like with LeVay, he influenced so much that you're going to hear it on TV. You're going to hear it from politicians like a Trump. Trump was, and whether you like him or not, and I'm not a Trump fan, but he was amongst the many Satanists and stuff. They would say he's the first satanic president. He didn't play by any rules. He did what he did. And, that influence is coming directly from LeVay or Crowley. David Bowie was a big Crowley fan. And not many people who are listening to David Bowie, listen to him, loving his poetry, are understanding that is heavily influenced by Crowley,
Right.
like major influence. So that influence of a person like that, the underground, the hipster, the jazz performer, the blues artist, anyone who's ever been an underground artist or counterculture person, let's say, if you don't want to call him an artist, if you have a different definition of art, a counterculture icon, those people are culture vultures usually. And so a graffiti, anything, and graffiti's gone on to sell sneakers, which is the exact opposite of what graffiti was when it started. So do I think people understand his stuff? I don't think they recognize where it's coming from. Like when you hear "sorry, not sorry," when you hear like those kind of empowerment statements today, those come directly from LeVay and nowhere else. But that influence isn't going to be heard by people. You'll see Christians wearing it. You'll see every single kind of person wearing it. So that his influence is what makes him historic or relevant to this day. Yeah, I think he's relevant today, if that's the idea. And I think a lot of the stuff you're saying in your circles aren't shocking, but the S word is shocking across the board. One of the most shocking words in this culture, in American culture, because like when you look at studies of religion, atheists are the least trusted group of people in America, which is shocking to me. But where do you think a Satanist would fall in? Because of that word, that S word, you use that S word. It is a shocking word. Like I said before, in the grocery store, you say that word, people are freaked. You say certain other words that may be racist or something else, and some people are like, I agree with you. I'm with you. But no one, there's not too many people that are going to go, hey, cool, you're down with the devil. Wow. That's not happening. To this day, it's not happening, which it does surprise me. Yeah, and
Uh,
some concepts of like pleasures of the flesh amongst your, I don't know how old you are, but younger people, yeah, they've come a long way. Things have come a long way. I'm old enough to be have envy for the younger people because of how many freedoms they have that I didn't have when they were younger.
yeah, I'm 39, but I can I'm old enough to see kind of what's stuff that's taken on kind of different seen through different eyes, and then again kind of wish I was old enough to understand what had come before me, to a complete, to a complete degree. But now let me ask you this: are there any occult books or spiritual books that had inspired you?
You mean before I met LeVay?
Or just affected your spiritual walk in general, or say you to where you are
Hmm.
now?
Hmm. Patti Smith.
Hmm.
Anything Patti Smith writes, I think she comes from a very, she's a Catholic. She comes from a very spiritual or soulful kind of philosophical beliefs.
Okay.
But I don't take that to heart. I'm not bothered by that. I think her writing it affects me in a deep way. Her art and her writing, her music affects me in most of her music. Some of it's commercial but every artist has those pot boilers. Most artists have a lot of bad artwork, and then they have the great stuff. But
Right.
Patty's great work makes me cry. Yeah, I mean, and it's not like it's like a weird cry, like water just falls out of my face, and I'm like, what the
Right.
fuck is going on here? I don't want to cry. I'm like not weeping, but just it's like, oh wow, and just water falls out. So that's the first one that comes to mind. And I know that's not typical, but I don't think with the occult workings or stuff like that, I think that's where you find the occult, the secrets, the secret knowledge is it embedded in poetry or artwork. That's why I find artwork so special. But again, that's my religion.
Uh-huh.
My is art. So I find all my, you want to talk about the master, who's the living master? Jodorowsky. Jodorowsky's the master. He's my master. His artwork is everything to me. When I go, let's say I don't do Sunday mornings, but to concept of people that understand in this culture, you say Sunday. And when I grew up, all stores were closed on Sunday. It was weird.
Right.
So on Sundays, I'm going to go to Jodorowsky's Twitter feed and read everything he said that week, all the little phrases he said, all the little concepts he's put out there. I'm like, that's my religion. Art's my
Right.
religion. He's my master. He's the master. He's the living master. And so I know when he passes, I'll be sad. I'll miss it. I'll be like, oh wow, that's where I picked up a lot of stuff, So Jodorowsky's one, Patti Smith, um,
Mhm.
David Bowie, even recently. Like I picked up a
Okay.
lot of stuff from Bowie. I had never listened to him, and then I had a life change, let's say, a big life change, a natural disaster that happened where I could not listen to any old music because it triggered me out. So I started listening to music I had never heard before, and David Bowie was one. I was like, "What's the deal with this guy? Everyone likes him. I've only heard his radio stuff. I'm like, I don't find him that great. Whatever. Whatever. I don't know." So I listen. I'm like, "Oh, this guy's great. A lot of his stuff is just wow." And so it brought me onto another path, where I started listening to it in a way where I was like, "Oh, this is really good stuff." And then I understood before I listened to him. He was informed by Crowley, and so I was like, "Oh, this is." He
Hmm.
understood it better than I did. I don't really. I only Crowley's that big in my world, but him being informed by Crowley, Bowie was able to speak Crowley to me where I could understand it, and I was like,
That
"Oh,
makes
well."
sense. That
His
makes
inter-
a lot of sense.
okay.
Um, Now you had worked with LeVay, and I also understand that you had done some work with some other notable people. We're going to get into that. But first, I want to just go ahead and say, you're from Chicago, right?
Oh yeah.
So go ahead and tell us a little bit about the Chicago occult scene, what it's like over
Hmm. Well, I hadn't been in Chicago in over 13 years. Moved back here 5 years ago,
there. Mm,
so it's a very different landscape. There's a place called the Occult Bookstore, and what I've heard is it's the oldest surviving occult bookstore in the country. Maybe
mm,
that's marketing hype. Who knows? But I know when I went in there as a young man, when I first met LeVay, the owner there was a real old guy, real, every, whatever. Everyone's bald, really, he was into it. He was into it. He
Right.
wasn't selling
Right.
books. And Crowley had been in his store and he had met Crowley. So I was like, whoa, I'm talking to someone that's ancient history. Wow, you met ancient history. So it was just so surreal to me. And so, oh, that guy gave me some great books. I wish I had them on my bookshelf now, but really great books. But they didn't have anyway. That was the scene when I was here coming back. The occult bookstore has been sold and it's different owners, but
Mhm.
still had the same vibe, which is we're not here to please you. We're here to service our community. They're not there to market. They don't care if anyone finds them. Truly an occult bookstore. They're not advertising. They're just
Right.
in a small, and it used to be a very big place and it shrunk and moved around based on culture, but it's a very small place now. But I really respect that place. I really respect the occult bookstore in Chicago. I think they do great work for people like ourselves that
Mhm.
are practitioners or on the path to study. Um, as far as the scene in Chicago now, and my age, I'm not really sure. I don't really. That's the best I could tell you. That's the best I could tell you.
Okay. All right. Now,
I
what I
stay pretty
was,
much. I stay pretty much to myself, and as my legend has grown, um, it's hard for me to go into circles where people know me because they act differently now. Because I'm known
Mhm.
because of Satanic Temple stuff, because of my association with LeVay. So I'm treated differently. People speak differently from around me. So I used to run a zine in the early days, and I came out with the name Michael Hunt. I used this pen name. And when
Mhm.
I would go in and drop it off, people would talk shit about that publisher, Michael Hunt. He's an asshole. He's talking to me. They're talking to me, Michael. But it was
Right.
beautiful because I get pure reactions. And when people know you're Michael Hunt or know you're that person, they clam up. They don't know who you know. There's an element there that perverts a true moment where I can't gauge the occult community in
Mhm.
Chicago based on that.
Okay. Now, what I was getting to previously, you had, I guess, worked with Wayne Gacy and Richard Ramirez,
Oh yeah.
from what I hear. Tell us a little bit about that. That's interesting.
Okay, Richard Ramirez. Okay, it ties into LeVay. I was writing Richard back and forth. And is there anything we can't say here?
You can, everything is free reign, man. You can say whatever you want.
Okay. Okay. I'm getting a twitch now because of TikTok. You can't say 17 million words on there, and you're
You're good here, man.
so Richard liked Asian foot porn magazines, and
Okay.
so we'd mail him that stuff, and I'd mail him stuff like that to ingratiate myself with him, and he would send artwork back. And then we were talking about I asked about Satanism, and stuff like that, and he sent me LeVay's phone number. He said, "Here's LeVay's phone number if you ever want to talk to him." I was like, "Wow, that's cool." So one day I decided I want to take advantage of this and call it. I want to go interview him, like you're doing here. Is the same what I was doing when I was younger. I was
Right.
like interviewing. I still do. I love interviewing people. So I want to interview LeVay, and I called the number. It was Zena LeVay and Nicholas Schreck, and so that was from Richard, and I thought it was wild, and eventually led to me meeting LeVay Anton. Well, that
Uh-huh.
didn't lead to it, but I was able to start parlaying that LeVay contacting LeVay's into being able to contact Anton.
Right.
Um, and working with Richard, I don't know. Richard was like everyone I grew up with. I'm a working class person.
Uh-huh.
I've been in jail. I've been arrested for a Class X felony. I was chained to one of the Chicago Rippers, which is a serial killer, and that was the first time I heard about Satanism. He was talking about how they did satanic rituals while they were murdering prostitutes and cutting off their breasts and putting them in freezers. And I was
Wow.
like, that's heavy. What the hell? I'm chained to the guy and I'm 17. I just turned 17. I should not have been with adults, bro. Like,
Wow.
I should not have been with adults like that. But I was, and I was chained to a serious adult, a serious killer. But my point, even he reminded me of people I was growing up with, working class, blue collar, stoners, people are doing drugs, metalheads.
Mhm.
And so that I related with Richard when I hear when I'd speak with him on the phone, or right with him. That's what I related to. You know, and I really appreciated Richard Ramirez's honesty, because when he'd write letters, he's like, I loved doing what I did. And I loved it and I would do it again. And most people that are in prison are like, I'm not guilty. I didn't, and it's like, bro, we got the video. No, that's not me. That's not me. They'll just keep going with it. It's like, yeah, it does look pretty much like you're guilty here.
Right.
No, it's not me. Richard didn't blame anyone. Richard didn't go on about it was his mom or anything like that. And I'm not absolving that his childhood was a rotten thing, and that does help out trip a switch. And so there was that. With John Wayne Gacy, I was working at a bar called the Bucktown Pub, and they did the Underground Comics Hall of Fame, and I was doing a zine at the time, and they wanted me to help them do their magazine. So they hired me on as a bartender and a editor and publisher, helped to publish their zines and comics. And so that's where that started. And the owner came to me and was like, hey, I'm going to start selling Gacy. I'm in touch with Gacy's nephew. He's going to come to the bar. And Gacy's nephew did come to the bar. And Gacy's nephew looked just like Uncle John.
Yeah.
And Gacy's nephew also had a boy with him that looked just like all of Gacy's victims. And I wouldn't say boy. When I say that, he looked of age. I didn't card him, of course, and it was a bar where a person could come and sit at the tables. Nothing illegal was going on my part.
Right.
Is what I'm trying to say. And I remember when he gave me money. He went to shake my hand, and he put $20 in it and rubbed my palm like this. And I was like, ooh, and I got creepy out. And then I'm making popcorn for him. I'm over here making popcorn, and I look over my shoulder and I go like this again, because I look over my shoulder. I look over, when I'm doing it, he's like smiling, and I look over my shoulder, his face is like, and I go, whoa, and I look back and it changed real quick. It was like he went back to smiling. I was like, oh. And so it was really scary
Wow.
dealing with his nephew. And his nephew was in on one of the murders. Like one of his friends, he sent over to Uncle John as a employee, and then he ended up digging the ditch in the basement and putting lye on it. And he said, I didn't know what was going on. My Uncle John just had me working for him, and I dug that and I put the lime there. So that's what he says, but it's a lot added up there where it's like, that's suspect, that's sus. And so that was a wild part. But then we started selling Gacy paintings, and I never made so much money in such a short time in my life. I made like $250,000 in
Oh, wow.
in 4 months. Like, boom, it was because he's on the death row, he's going. And so I remember like people come to the bar, I was like, I'd say, okay, I need 1,000 for the painting. Yeah, no problem. That was easy. I need 5,000 for the painting. Well, no problem. I need 10,000 for the painting. Yeah, I got it. So I was like, wow, this is wild.
Wow.
Yeah, right. It was like crazy. It was on. And so this one guy comes, picks it up, and I go in the alley to exchange things with them and give him the painting, give me the money, and I'm like, so, and I would ask people, what's going to go on with this? What are you going to do with it? If you don't mind me asking, you hang it in the living room? Because I was interested. Because for me, when I first got my first Gacy painting from Mike Johnson from the Bucktown Pub, I hung it in my living room. I was like, why am I so fucking disturbed by this? What's wrong with it? Why am I so bothered? And what bothered me about it was a state approved harassment. Like they were letting the prison was letting a serial killer sort of taunt people by selling paintings all over the world. It's not the idea that he could paint, but he made a business of it. He had an assembly line on death row where people were painting the backgrounds of trees, stuff like that. So
Right.
I was like, wow, this is like state approved. This is weird. And there's no consideration for victims or anyone else that might be, as we could say today, triggered out.
Right.
And so, but this guy go out in the alley and sell him this painting. And I'm like, what are you going to do with it? He's like, oh, I'm putting it in my dungeon. I go, what do you mean dungeon? And he goes, oh, I run a gay bondage dungeon, and that's going to be on the wall, the center piece of the wall. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay.
Okay.
And that was like the most disturbing thing I heard. I don't know why it disturbed me. It was a shock to me. It still is. I don't see the serial killer and the sex thing, but I have dated some really freaky women. And they are definitely, like, hey, let's watch this serial killer movie. It turns me on. I'm like,
Right.
So it makes me think of that moment, like, but I don't have a turn on for it. I do have a turn on for people who are turned on, period. So
All right, man. So, let me ask you this. Out of all of LeVay's books, what would you say is your favorite one?
Oh, what is the purple one?
The Satanic Witch?
No, I would tell you, yeah, that was the first one I read. You want
Okay.
to say, but there was one he wrote where it's like, I got to look at the list of, do you have the list of books?
I don't. I have a handful of them, a few of them on my bookshelf, but I don't know. I don't think I have that one you're describing.
Um, what the okay, where is it? Satan Speaks. I
Okay.
really like
I
Satan
haven't
Speaks,
read
but
that one.
I like it because it's like it's I like LeVay's articles, stuff he wrote for the Cloven Hoof,
Mhm.
stuff he wrote for newspapers. I like that because it wasn't so theatrical. It was him,
I'll have
you
to
know,
check it out. Yeah.
like talking about salad dressing tests and stuff like that, like talking
Oh,
about culture, talking about things that weren't in his occult books. But the Satanic Witch was the first one I read, and I had sold the Satanic Bible out of my gallery, a goat gallery I had, but I didn't. I flipped through it, and I was like, okay. And the Satanic Witch, I was dating someone, and they had it on their shelf, and I stole it off their shelf and read it and brought it back to them, and they're like so upset because I'd taken all their secrets. I'm like, oh, I got you now. This is your map, huh? And I really liked it because I thought it was a great. And I always thought, I remember asking LeVay when I interviewed him
yeah.
if he was satanic warlock. Now, present day, I don't acknowledge warlocks like that. I think everyone's a witch. It's okay to be it's not a
Right.
gender. It's a gender neutral word. It should be. So I
Yeah.
consider myself a witch. I'm not going to go, I'm a warlock, so therefore I'm better than the witch. You know. So out of his books, I really like that book the best. His
Okay.
cult, his self-help books is what I call
It's a
them.
great book. Yeah. Now tell us about the Witch's Sabbath, something that's coming up that you have planned. Tell us all about it. And this is with you and Lucy Vaughn, am I right?
Well, this is an event I came up with like 5 years ago where I was like, I need to do something that is um, as important for my folks, which is as it would be for the folks who celebrate Christmas or
Hmm.
anything else, Ramadan or anything else they're celebrating. I wanted something that, like I want to say, I got to take a couple days off. This is my day. I'll work on Christmas, no problem. Not that I have a gig like that, but it's like, that's how I thought of it. So I started to recruit artists that had some energy to them. Like I didn't want to, like, I didn't put on an event like a promoter. I did it like an artist or a witch for witches artist. It's an art event for artists or witch event for
Right.
witches. And so I looked for bands that I didn't even understand what was going on with them necessarily. I just saw them. I would go and see them live. I'm like, oh, you have energy. There's this unknown occult energy with your show. You really get things, boom, you get a room full quick with energy. And so I really needed to do it, the first one, as a ritual, almost like I did do it as a ritual. And so it all fell together like that. And it was really great. It was spectacular, so spectacular. Like we had a place that's fit 350 to 400 people. We had almost 2,000 people turn out. They were all over the
Oh,
neighborhood.
nice.
We had 18 cop cars turn out, two cop helicopters above. The domestic terrorism task force showed up. I was quite proud of all of that. I loved it. No
Right on.
joke. Um,
This had started in Chicago, right? And
yeah,
now
yeah.
this year it's going to be in Los Angeles.
Well, because Los Angeles is a cooler place. And I love Chicago. It's just a different place, different vibe. In Los Angeles, people understand the entertainment or the illusion of what's going on. So, you can be a person who plays Dracula on TV, but no one's going to see you as Dracula. They're going to see you as an actor or something like
Right.
that. So Los Angeles is pretty like, yeah, it's cool. The devil's cool. Well, I've seen some movies like with the devil. Here, it's like the devil's not cool, bro. And so LA, I love, there's not going to be any hassle there. And that's why we're doing it in LA, even though I wanted to do it all over the country. I think Los Angeles, San Francisco, Las Vegas, Reno, those are the places that the Witches Sabbath should probably go down, is where they understand
Hmm.
we have an individual nuanced existence and they want to cater to all of that. Yeah, so Lucy Vaughn's helping Sharon LeVay and myself. Sharon has become a partner in the event with me.
Right on.
And last year I was working with her and Stanton, and then Stanton passed away, and I didn't want to do last year's. And Sharon pushed that. Like, she's a real strong-willed person. And she's also someone who like keeps the pit bulls or the snakes at bay. Like me and
Mhm.
Stan would go at each other. We'd be like, ah, we had a real tumultuous relationship. I love that man. I'm really sad he's gone.
He, by the way, he did the introduction for your book, right? Staten did.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Where's my book?
Yeah,
Sorry.
tell us a little bit about your book really quick too.
You want me to go get my book is Inside the Satanic Temple. Their secret.
It's fine. I'll include a link to it below the video description so people can get it on Amazon.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a book that I put a lot of time into, but it's beyond that. That title's so limiting. That group is so limited, and that title's so limited because it's actually a really good book if you're into any occult studies, because it has like I have LeVay's last interview in full, Stanton's last interview in full, Carla LeVay's last interview in full. Carla's still alive, but she said she won't do any more interviews. But who knows about that? But I have a great interviews with them, if I do say so myself, and those are in there, and it's packed with like writings from Peter Gilmore, writings from Anton LaVey, writings they wrote for me exclusively. Then there's writings from Lucian Greaves, Doug Mesner, Doogie is what I used to call him when he was a protege of mine. I mentored Doogie for a long time.
Mhm.
So I have writings from him. He did an interview with me before we became enemies. So I have all of that in there. It's a really, I find it, I'm pretty impressed with it. And I judge myself harshly. I don't like a lot of my work. Like I do it, and I'm like, oh, I could have done better. I
Right.
could have done better. This is I'm real proud of, because at my age, it's also a culmination of decades of
And
work.
what's the book called?
Inside the Satanic Temple, their
Inside
secrets
the.
revealed.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And this event in LA is going to be held from when to when?
Well, we will do it from April 30th to May 1st. And so April 30th is the big ritual, let's say, the event. And then May 1st, we'll do a book signing and a Q&A question. Me and Sharon LeVay will do a question and answer
Okay.
type of thing where people can ask questions. We'll answer, we'll sign books, and we'll hang out like that. And then we might go do a cemetery walk or something like that. But the holiday, April 30th, goes into May 1st. So it's one,
Okay.
I think I look at it as one holiday, 1 2-day period is my holiday there. So that's why April 30th to May 1st.
Okay. Cool. Well, everyone who's watching, I will have below in the video description a link to Shane's book, his a link to his YouTube channel, his social media links, and also to check out his page about the Witches Sabbath coming up. Anyone who wants to go ahead and attend that. Shane, it's been very interesting talking with you. Thank you again for coming on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And everyone who's watching, like and subscribe to Dark Sorcery.
Peace.